Imagine serving the final patron during the closing shift at a packed diner, cleaning the tables, shutting the front door, and then just vanishing. Not on the street, not on the way home, but within the establishment itself where, just minutes earlier, scores of people had noticed you. And 70 years later, the truth eventually comes to light. From inside the structure's walls, from an area so unattainable that it defies any reasoning regarding the placement of a human body there without anyone observing after decades of uninterrupted functioning. Prior to diving, to learn more about this tale that will make you reevaluate everything regarding disappearances in public spaces, sign up for the channel and turn on the alert bell, because the situation you're going to, one of the most unsettling secrets of the American restaurant age, is uncover. This is not merely a female narrative who disappeared. It tells the tale of how someone can practically vanish in front of a whole community, of how bricks and masonry can conceal a secret while daily life goes on as usual. The other side, and how, occasionally, the solutions we seek are concealed in the same buildings we live in on a daily basis. The narrative starts in the heyday of diners served as the social hub of rural towns in 1950s America. Waitresses were familiar with every patron by name, thus it seemed impossible for them to vanish from a busy public space. Impossible. In October of 1955, Jennifer Marie Taylor was 24 years old. Additionally, to everyone in, she was the amiable face that welcomed them in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Rosie's Diner, always grinning, never forgetting how much you enjoyed your coffee, which never fails to lighten even the most difficult days. Standing 5 feet, despite having a frail constitution and just 3 inches tall, he is incredibly robust after years of. She carried bulky platters and wore her dark brown hair in a sensible ponytail. Jennifer's dark eyes gleamed with true warmth when she was at work. Has the uncommon ability to make everyone feel valued. Born on. Jennifer was raised in a working-class family in Winston-Salem on August 7, 1931. William Taylor, her father, was employed at the R.J. Reynolds during the Great Depression and World War II. The major employer in the city, Tobacco Factory, runs machinery that processes tons of tobacco leaves every day. Elizabeth Taylor, her mother, earned additional money by sewing at home, repairing neighbors' clothing, and even making personalized gowns. Jennifer had a younger brother and a younger sister, Susan, who was 3 years younger, Paul, who is 5 years younger. The family resided in a little home with 2 bedrooms in the West End, a working-class area with wooden homes painted in pastel colors, streets shadowed by trees. In this close-knit neighborhood, doors were rarely locked, where kids played in the streets until nightfall without concern. Jennifer's early years were humble but joyful, with summertime community gatherings. She was an ordinary but popular student at school, and she attended church every Sunday. In 1949, Jennifer, being 18, received her diploma from Reynolds High School. In contrast to, while several of her classmates attended college or got married right away, Jennifer had to find employment. The family required each and every. She may contribute a penny. At the age of 2, she was hired as a waitress at Rosie's Diner, weeks following graduation, and stayed there for the following 6 years. Rosa's Dining was a Winston-Salem institution, situated at the intersection of Cherry Street and 4th Street, in the center of. It was a traditional American diner from the 1950s downtown. Bright chrome exterior, neon signage in red and blue, as well as big windows that let onlookers view the bustling inside. Additionally, there's a large counter with swivel stools covered in red vinyl inside, booths made of imitation leather along the walls, and a spotless black and white. The floor is checkered. Harold Simmons was the owner of the diner. 57-year-old, heavy-set man who had bought the business in 1947 and made it one of the most well-liked spots in the city. At 6 in the morning, Rosie's opened. Closed 6 days a week at 11 p.m., with the exception of Sundays. It provided breakfast throughout the day, the greatest hamburgers in North Carolina, as well as the baked pastries that veterans Every morning, Martha Washington made milkshakes that were so thick that the straw would be able to support itself. Jennifer worked mostly in the afternoon and evening, starting at 2 o'clock in the Tuesday through Saturday, 5 days a week, from the afternoon until 11 o'clock at night. It was challenging labor, hours on her feet, hands always occupied with cleaning, serving, shouting commands to the kitchen. Jennifer, however, adored it. She cherished the vitality of the diner, enjoyed interacting with others, and cherished the sense of belonging to anything that the community cared about. She was a really skilled worker. She recalled the preferences of her regular clients. Mr. Patterson consistently wanted his coffee hot and black. Mrs. Chun mildly enjoyed her toast, not golden brown, but roasted. Tommy Bradford, who was young, always requested chocolate. After school Sunday, every client felt heard, seen, and valued thanks to Jennifer. This was reflected in her tips. She regularly made 20 to 30% more than other waitresses just because she was so well-liked. However, Jennifer wasn't merely an Ikkyo is a superb waitress. She was a remarkable individual. Well known for her generosity, she frequently covered the cost of meals for clients she knew were struggling financially, saying it was a error on the bill during their protests. She remained up late to assist Martha in cleaning the kitchen when the old cook was worn out. When co-workers experienced family emergencies, she filled in for them without grumbling. In 1955, Jennifer was still living with her parents. It was typical for single women to stay at home until they were 24 years old. Union. She assisted her mother with home tasks, paid for household expenditures, and put some money down for a future in which she intended to get married and buy a house. A young man was present in actuality, 26-year-old mechanic Daniel Green was employed at Green's Auto Fix-It, West 5th Street firm owned by his father. Jennifer and Daniel had lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same church, and were lifelong friends. They started. 1953 saw the start of serious dating, and by October 1955, everyone anticipated the arrival of an engagement ring. Daniel visited Rosie's nearly every evening that, while working, Jennifer ate pie, drank coffee, and sat at the counter to be close to her when she's working. Jennifer's routine was reassuring and dependable. At 11 in the morning, she awoke. Morning on workdays, late by most people's standards, yet essential when working through the night. She assisted with some housework, ate breakfast with her mother, and light lunch at 1 p.m. She always arrived around 1:45 in the morning after walking the 20 minutes to Rosie's. 15 minutes early in the afternoon to get ready before her shift began at 2 o'clock. The afternoon and evening shift was hectic. The late lunch surge was the first, then relaxed a little before supper, which started at 5 o'clock and lasted until 8:30. At night, the movement slowed after 9 p.m. Only a few common patrons, late shift workers, and even youngsters searching for a seat. At 10:30 p.m., Jennifer started the process of shutting, wiping down tables, storing condiments, getting things ready for the morning shift. She didn't close by herself. There was always accompanied by at least one other individual, typically the proprietor Harold Simmons, or on. Another designated employee took his days off. Fundamental security and corporate strategy. However, a deadly breach of this policy was about to occur. Jennifer had few elaborate hobbies or vices. She abstained from smoking, which was remarkable at the time when everyone appeared to smoke. On special occasions, she sipped a glass of red wine, but nothing more. She loved movies. Daniel and she visited the Carolina Theater. She watched everything from musical romances to westerns practically every Friday on her night off. Jennifer also enjoyed reading, mostly mystery books, and kept an assortment of. She read and reread Agatha Christie novels. There was a subtle sadness in Jennifer on occasion. She cherished Daniel, her career, and her life, yet she dreamed of more as well. Going outside of North Carolina, possibly witnessing the ocean, maybe one day owning a house with a garden. These were modest aspirations by today's standards, but in 1955, a waitress's financial situation. They were important. William, her 51-year-old father, and 49-year-old Elizabeth were pleased with Jennifer. She was accountable, diligent, and considerate. Her sister Susan, 21, was a fan of Jennifer and often asked for guidance on life and boys. Paul, a 19-year-old employee, formed a protective bond with his elder sisters while working in the same tobacco business as his father. October of 1955. Jennifer was in a wonderful place in her life. Daniel had money set aside for a ring. She had been given a tiny pay raise and promoted to head waitress at Rosie's. The family was in good health. The future appeared encouraging. However, on a seemingly ordinary fall evening, Jennifer's life would end in such an unexplainable and unsettling manner that it would raise concerns that would stay unresolved for 70 years. And when the answers were eventually provided, they would originate from within the building's boundaries, not from an inquiry or a confession where Jennifer had served others for 6 years of her life, during which time she was spotted alive, where her body would be concealed while the meal went on for the final time. Running, patrons kept eating, and life went on around A. Hidden beneath brickwork. The evening of October 28, 1955, was A. Rosa's diner was quite crowded on Friday, but not too busy. The late October weather was pleasant, with a temperature of 16 degrees Celsius at 6 o'clock in the evening. There won't be any rain, and the early morning temperatures are predicted to drop to 10 degrees. It was a normal North Carolina fall evening. As usual, Jennifer had shown up for work at 1:45 p.m. She wore a white apron tied at the waist, a pink dress with a white collar, and her waitress outfit. The waist, useful white rubber shoes, and a tiny name badge on her left chest. In the kitchen, she greeted Martha Washington and asked Harold Simmons concerning the pie inventory, and she started working at precisely 2 p.m. The afternoon went by as usual. Jennifer worked at a manufacturing, serving numerous clients. Families with small children placing hamburger orders, employees pausing for coffee and pie after work, and milkshakes and late-night coffee talks with city businessmen. She grinned, prepared fresh coffee, cleared tables, delivered food, and took orders all in a familiar routine that she had spent 6 years perfecting. As usual, Daniel Green showed up at 7:30 p.m. He sat down in his. I ordered coffee and a slice of Martha's apple pie from my favorite stool at the end of the counter. He and Jennifer talked about her responsibilities, well-known jokes, and her plans for the following day's movies. Nothing noteworthy, just another typical evening. Daniel completed his coffee and pie around 9:45 p.m. He gave Jennifer a quick peck on the cheek and whispered, "Need to go." Harold pretended to be offended by the gesture, but that was adored by all. "I'll see you at the movie tomorrow night. 7 o'clock, as." Jennifer grinned and said, "Always." He said, "I love you, Jen," using the nickname that he and his immediate relatives solely used. "I also adore you. Take caution when driving." At 9:48 p.m., Daniel departed. Later, a number of witnesses attested to seeing him go. He entered his 1952 Ford pickup after waving to a few people he knew on the street, and took a car home. He didn't see Jennifer alive again after that. At 10:30 p.m., the diner was nearly deserted. There were just 3 clients left. Mr. Patterson, a 68-year-old widower who visited Rosie's each night while seated in his typical, reading the Winston-Salem Journal in a booth. Michael and Bobby Chun, 2 teens. Stuart, a 16-year-old, sipping milkshakes and having a quiet conversation about girls. Additionally, Kevin Walsh, a 33-year-old truck driver at the counter had. Before continuing on his path, he made a late dinner stop. Jennifer started the process of shutting. She restocked the sugar, and the tables had salt shakers. To make sure there was a new pot, she brewed fresh coffee. The pre-air was cleansed by her. At 10 o'clock at night, Martha Washington had already departed. Her shift finished early, and she walked home for an hour. At 10:45 p.m., Mr. Patterson made his bill. He consistently left a $123 tip, or precisely 15%. That evening, "Good night, Mr. Patterson." "Good night, Jennifer," he said at the door. "View." As he stepped out into the October night, she waved, saying, "You Monday." At 10:52 Bobby paid $35 after the two youngsters completed their split milkshake that evening. "Thank you, Miss Taylor," he remarked courteously, adding a 10-cent tip. "You're boys welcome," she joked. "Stay out of trouble." They chuckled and walked away, pushing. Kevin Walsh, who was eating his hamburger, was the only one left as they strolled down 4th Street, teasing each other. And Fries, perusing a truck driver's magazine. At 10:58 p.m., he concluded, made his bill of $2.15, tipped $50, and left. "Thank you for the food," he added. "Drive carefully," Jennifer said, as she always did. Jennifer was the only person at Rosa's diner at 11 p.m. Importantly, Harold Simmons was absent for reasons that would never be completely understood. Explained that Harold had departed earlier that evening at approximately 9 p.m. He trusted Jennifer to handle a family situation on her own. Was against his own policy. Yet Jennifer was his most dependable worker, and he thought there would be no issues for one night. Jennifer secured the entrance door. Later, a number of onlookers claimed to have witnessed her turn the key and hang the close sign at 11:02 p.m. She was alive, well, and seemed to be in normal condition. Then, nobody would ever know in the next 10 or 20 minutes. Specifically, something occurred that caused Jennifer Taylor to vanish. All from a shuttered diner in the middle of a city with not a single scream being heard, with no discernible indication of struggle, without any proof that she had ever been there. Harold Simmons showed up the following Saturday, October 29th, at 5:30 a.m. to open for business. Shift, he discovered that everything appeared normal and the entrance door was locked as it should be. He opened it, went inside, and started getting ready as usual. The first waitress of the morning shift, a 42-year-old woman named Doris, didn't arrive until about 6:15 in the morning. When Franklin came, someone saw that something wasn't right. "Where is Jennifer?" "The lights were on," Doris said, surveying her surroundings. The diner showed up to have been somewhat ready for closing the previous evening, although there were indications of unfinished work. A coffee maker, on the warmer still, now burned after being turned on for hours. Certain tables are not. The cash register is still open after cleaning. Harold scowled. Last night, she closed. She must have returned home. However, there was a problem. Jennifer would never go. The register is open. Coffee would never be left scorching by her. It was entirely out of character. Harold gave the Taylor house a call. On the third ring, Elizabeth picked up. "I apologize for calling so early, Mrs. Taylor. Is Jennifer present?" A bewildered. "Take a moment." "No, she hasn't returned from her job yet." "Harold, isn't she? I assume she might have stayed at a friend's house." "There?" Harold felt his stomach constrict. "She closed yesterday night, but she isn't present. Right now." The universe seemed to tilt to Elizabeth Taylor. 20 minutes later, William Taylor lost it. His face was gloomy with fear as he passed past Rosa's cafe. "My daughter is where?" They looked into every booth, the restroom, the storage area, the cafeteria, and even the kitchen. They couldn't find Jennifer. Her purse, which she consistently left in. Harold's tiny workspace. The coat that had been hanging on a hanger close to the back entranced the night before was not there. The cops were contacted at 7 in the morning. 46-year-old Detective Thomas Brennan, years old, who had worked for the Winston-Salem Police Department for 17 years, came with two officers in uniform. Harold, Doris, and the Taylor who had hurried to the diner were interviewed. "When did?" Brennan asked Harold. "When did you last see her?" "Last night, at around 9 o'clock. I had a family. I had to go early due to an emergency, but I was certain Jennifer could close by herself. She's done a few times previously." "How did you find the location exactly?" "Front. Coffee is still burning on the warmer. The door is locked, the lights are on, and the register." Brennan took notes and opened with roughly $87 for the evening. "So, whoever was here wasn't interested in robbery." Harold looked closely to make sure all the money was there. "I don't notice anything missing, so it seems to be the original. Brennan and his crew conducted a thorough investigation, interviewing every person who had visited the diner the night before. At 10:45 p.m., Mr. Patterson attested to seeing Jennifer alive and well. At 10:52 p.m., two teens attested to her normalcy. The truck driver, Kevin Walsh, was found on his route and verified he left Jennifer around 11 o'clock at night, that she was by herself, and that she appeared totally normal. A number of people who had been on 4th Street were found. 3 witnesses attested to seeing Jennifer between 11 o'clock and midnight. Around 11:02 at night, the front door was locked, but nobody noticed anything out of the ordinary. Nobody saw Jennifer go out the front or back door after that. "It's like she evaporated," Brennan remarked after hearing screams or noises of struggle. Daniel Green was thoroughly questioned, as is customary, by his partner, Detective Frank Morrison. At first, boyfriends are always viewed as suspects, but Daniel had strong alibis. He had made a stop at a gas station. After leaving the diner at 10:15 p.m., the attendant recalled him. When he got home at around 10:30 at night, his parents verified that he was there all night. The news of Jennifer's abduction clearly saddened him, and investigators swiftly. He was ruled out as a suspect. Volunteers searched. Via Winston-Salem Center, examined alleys, empty lots, and the tiny surrounding park. Salem Creek, which ran around 8 blocks from the diner, was even hauled, but nothing was discovered. Jennifer's. Her coat and handbag were never found, and it seemed as though she had. The moment she locked that door, she just vanished. Theories abounded. The rear door was closed from the inside in the morning, so maybe someone had gone in. Maybe she had left willingly with someone, but why? And what happened to her coat and purse? Maybe abduction, but no ransom was demanded, and the Taylor family had. The most terrible hypothesis was that someone had no money to pay the ransom. After Jennifer secured the front entrance, someone might have entered the diner by hiding in the storage area or bathroom before closing, that somebody might have attacked Jennifer, killed her, and then what? How was the body taken? The front entrance was open from the street. The rear door led to an alley, but a body was still inside. It would be dangerous to go unnoticed, and why? There was no proof of sexual. Weeks stretched into months. There was no theft. What would be the motivation? Local publications gave Jennifer Taylor's case a lot of coverage. The waitress inexplicably vanishes from the closed diner, but in the absence of fresh information, the story. After being officially proclaimed deceased in October 1962, Jennifer soon vanished from the front pages. Elizabeth's parents were never found 7 years after she vanished. William grew quiet, experienced extreme worry, and seldom left the house. Withdrawn and clearly getting older every year, Susan got married in 1958, but carried the anguish of her sister's absence throughout her entire life. Paul enlisted in the Army in 1957. Daniel Green waited for 2 years, in part to get away from the memories of Iden. Hope against hope that Jennifer will just come back. Eventually, life compelled to move on. In 1960, he wed Mary, a compassionate woman, and had 3 children. Children led what appeared to be a regular existence, but those who knew him well understood that. On that October night in 1955, a portion of Daniel remained. Harold Simmons ran Rosie's Diner until 1968. After he sold it, the new owner changed the name to Sally's Place while maintaining the design and customer base. Over the ensuing decades, the diner saw multiple ownership changes. Joe's Diner in the 1970s, the Retro Eats in the 1990s, Americana Grill in the 1980s. Every new owner altered the menu, updated the decor, and made repairs, yet the building's fundamental framework still stood, and Jennifer Taylor was waiting somewhere inside its walls, awaiting circumstances and technology that would eventually show where she had. There, all that time, not in some far-off place, not in some hidden grave. From the city, but there, only a short distance from the dining area, laughed, and went about their lives without realizing the horror that was. The years changed Winston-Salem beneath the bricks, just as they changed everything. America The city's once dominant tobacco industry started too. Downtown's fall after being so bustling in the 1950s. Out as consumers flocked to suburban shopping malls. Old structures were. Some were demolished for parking lots, some transformed, and still others were abandoned. Taylor spent decades working in the field before passing away from lung cancer in 1982 at the age of 78. Until the very end, he maintained Jennifer's room exactly as she had left it. Elizabeth passed away in October 1955 and survived until 1991. Dying in a nursing home at the age of 85, but continuing to question caregivers if they had heard about Jennifer. Susan was married, had 2 kids, and resided in Charlotte. Died in 2018 at the age of 84. After serving in Vietnam, Paul returned and worked as a instructor who passed away in 2020 at the age of 84. Daniel Green, who lived until 2019, took the anguish of never knowing what had happened to their sister to his death, passing away at the age of 90. According to his wife Mary, even decades after every now and then, he woke up from dreams in which Jennifer was calling to tell him where she was. He was unable to go to her since she was confined somewhere. They were dreams nearer the truth than he would ever discover. Harold Simmons passed away in 1995. In 1988, Detective Thomas Brennan retired and the cook, Martha Washington, passed away in 2007. The Taylor case is still one of 3 unresolved disappearances that dogged him all his professional life. As the years went by, the structure the location of Rosie's Diner underwent multiple changes. In 2005, the building remained vacant for years after the last restaurant closed. Decaying, the city's outside walls were plastered in graffiti, and vandals had destroyed windows. Thought of dismantling it several times, but bureaucratic obstacles prevented it from happening until 2024, when a development firm bought the building and the land around it, intending to tear down the old building and construct a contemporary apartment complex, a component of downtown Winston-Salem's reconstruction that was gradually reviving the deserted facility. On March 14, 2025, to start the job, a demolition crew from Carolina Demolition and Construction showed up. James, the supervisor, the 48-year-old Rodriguez, assembled his group of 6 men and started the procedure of methodically disassembling the structure from the inside out, beginning with the removal of any residual equipment, then internal partitions. On March 16th, the 3rd day they were working in what was once the kitchen of the original diner. An employee named Marcus Thompson, 33, was breaking down a wall with a sledgehammer. His sledgehammer smashed the wall between the kitchen and a small storage room about 2:30 in the afternoon. He saw something odd as he passed through a stretch of bricks. Behind the bricks he had just smashed, there was an empty space, not wiring or plumbing, as one might anticipate, but a substantial. "James, come see this. It's empty," Marcus called. Rodriguez descended from his position overseeing work on the 2nd floor. He looked at the hole that Marcus had created. He lit the area behind with a spotlight, and they both froze. Within a human skeleton was evident in the flashlight's beam in the vacant space beyond the brick wall. It was leaning against what looked to be the original bricks of the building while partially seated, wearing what was obviously a garment, the remnants of degraded cloth. Additionally, next to the skeleton, a decaying leather bag and what looked like a coat. "Jesus Christ," Rodriguez muttered. "Stop everything. Nothing is touched. Otherwise, contact the police right once." Over the course of the following few hours, the scene turned into a thorough forensic inquiry with the arrival of the Winston-Salem police, detectives, and then a full forensic team. 52-year-old medical examiner Dr. Patricia Chun. Before being removed, the female cautiously descended to see the remains in situ. She talked into her recorder, estimating her age at the moment based on pelvic shape. Of death, early 20s. The entire skeleton is remarkably intact. The sealed. There were traces of the white apron and pink dress, and the space was dry. There is obvious severe brain trauma, and the occipital fracture is consistent with powerful blow or impact. The ruined purse had things that had survived. The years in the arid area, a leather wallet with pieces of identification, keys, lipstick, a few cash, and most importantly, a tiny metal name tag that. The rust was not entirely hidden. Jennifer Detective Michael Harrison, 45 years old, who had taken up the case, compared the name to past records of missing persons. He found a match within hours. 24-year-old Jennifer Marie Taylor vanished from the same building, Rosie's Diner, on October 28, 1955. Oh my gosh, Harrison. The news went viral. She's been here for 70 years. A missing waitress was discovered shut up in an old diner and screamed, solving a 70-year mystery. National headlines. The narrative has everything needed to pique readers' interest. Macabre discovery, a young woman, and a mystery spanning decades. The reconstruction of. It took weeks for what transpired to be revealed, but forensic. The brick wall, where Jennifer was discovered, was not original to the structure built in 1947. Construction records attested to the fact that it was a later addition. In November 1955, Rosa's Diner underwent extensive remodeling, only a few weeks after Jennifer vanished. In particular, a brand new brick wall had been constructed to block off unneeded storage space. Harold approved and oversaw the work. Simmons. Watson Construction, the contractor who completed the work, shut down in 1973. Although all comprehensive documentation had been lost, but city documents verified that masonry work had been completed in late November 1955. The most plausible hypothesis, predicated on Jennifer had been attacked on the evening of October 28th, and the physical evidence and reconstruction were terrifying. The cerebral trauma indicated a powerful impact or fall as she closed by herself. Attacker, whose identity is still unknown, killed her or rendered her unconscious before confronting a body in a panic. At the rear of the kitchen was a tiny storage area that could only be reached via a tiny door that was cluttered, ignored, and used for infrequently required objects. The assailant concealed Jennifer's body there for a short while, and then later on in the weeks that follow, when Harold Simmons made the decision to remodel and shut down that underutilized storage area. Someone, perhaps the assailant, perhaps it was Harold or a collaborator, perhaps without realizing it, construction workers merely constructed a brick wall to entirely enclose the area, and Jennifer with it, which clarified why she was never located after thorough searches. She had been there from the start, only a few meters away from where the investigators had been, from where patrons had dined for many years, from where life had persisted. Harold Simmons was the obvious choice as she lay confined behind bricks. Suspicious. By letting Jennifer near by herself, he had broken his own rules. Weeks later, he would have had the chance and resources to oversee the wall's construction, but Harold had been deceased for 30 years. His motives, culpability, and justice are all out of grasp. Impossible to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. There was also the unsettling possibility that someone else, maybe someone who had slipped into the diner before it closed, possibly Jennifer, had slain her after giving in to their trust, and then, by macabre coincidence, when Harold made the decision to refurbish, the body was sealed without Harold being able to. Without witnesses or confessions, the full truth would remain unseen forever. Jennifer Taylor was eventually interred in April 2025 at Winston-Salem's Salem Cemetery in a portion with a view of the downtown that had served as both her place of employment and her unintentional cemetery. Direct family, all of them passed away, but unexpectedly, over 100 individuals attended the burial. Local residents and descendants of those who had known Jennifer. The narrative touched both Winston-Salem residents and historians. The epitaph said, Jennifer Marie Taylor, 1931 to 1955. Waitress, daughter, cherished at last at rest. A tiny memorial was built on the site of Rosie's Diner. The area became a tiny niche after the city of Winston-Salem erected a plaque narrating Jennifer Taylor's story. Garden in the renovated downtown. The case is a sobering reminder of a number of realities, the first of which is that people can vanish from public areas, even while witnesses are there, aligned tragically. Secondly, that occasionally the response is we. They have been right under our noses for decades, and they are quite near. Third, that in 1955, there were no security cameras or DNA. Without many of the technologies we take for granted today, crimes might occur and be unsolved for a very long time. Fourth, the worst mysteries are those that are solved as well as those that are never solved. The family that endured decades of suffering, the boyfriend who spent his entire life pondering the acquaintances and co-workers who were guilty, and confusion. For Jennifer Taylor, who just wanted to lead a straightforward but contented existence, who loved her work, who planned marriage and a future, who was compassionate to everyone. On a night in October, everything descended into violence, and then her body, her memories, her presence itself was forgotten and hidden behind masonry, while without her, the world went on. 70 years is enough time for cities to alter entirely. Winston-Salem of 2025 is nearly unrecognizable in comparison to 1955. The tobacco business, which employed the diner where Jennifer worked, changed hands, and her father passed away a long time ago, dozens of times before being destroyed. Every client, everyone who knew her, every friend and co-worker had vanished. Yet when the bricks were eventually, there was a silent justice in the removal and discovery of Jennifer. Forgotten, her name was recalled, her story was relayed, and even though the answers, the enigma of Jennifer arrived, but it was too late for those who loved her. Taylor's problem was resolved, but the sorrow of a life cut short at age 24 of decades of family suffering, a stolen future, and a body concealed in an impossible grave while life went on just a few inches away. That sorrow cannot be resolved. It continues to serve as evidence of the frailty of existence and the brutality that what people are capable of and the overwhelming weight of unresolved questions that the walls were eventually demolished and the bricks were carried by the families of the lost, eliminated, as well as Jennifer Taylor, who grinned and served coffee at Rosie's Diner for 6 years, who dreamed of a future she never had, who loved and was loved. Chance to Live was at last released from her brick-and-mortar prison. At peace now, but the horror of that October night in 1955, and of what was done to conceal it still lingers. It serves as a reminder that occasionally, monsters construct walls, conceal evidence, and do not originate from the outer world. Go back to work on Monday as if nothing had happened, and for 70 years they receive. Take it with you until the bricks are eventually removed and secrets can no longer be concealed. At last, eternity is revealed.